This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, dear colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, uh, from whichever time zone you're joining. So, let's get started. We have passed our due time. So, let me just share my screen. Please provide me a vocal confirmation if you are able to view my screen, and also if you are able to view the screen that I'm sharing. So, I will be sharing my VS Code today. So, let me know if you are able to see the VS Code ID if you're seeing the same.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
sir.
great. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. One question, Cyril, before going ahead, actually, package.json, for you, it shows in a different icon. For me, it is in flower braces. So in yellow color. Is that fine or is that a version issue? I'm not sure actually.
No, no, the the symbol that you see at the front of this package or JSON, right? This is coming from an icon extension that I have installed. So I will just show you that as well. So I kind of prefer to use that. So the extension name is VS Code-icons. So
Hmm.
if you have installed this icons extension, you will find everything in an icon format. So that's why my JS file also shows a JS icon, all that, and npm shows the npm icon. So nothing difference there. It's all the same.
Okay, let me install that as well. So it will be
Yeah,
same.
not really needed. If you want, you can do that. Yeah, it's just an icon customizer, nothing special on it. So before we start today's session, I just have some queries or prerequisites for today's session. So the thing is, we have completed demo session and day one session, right? Demo session and day one. Okay. And if you haven't watched the videos of the same, please go back and watch the videos, because in the day one session particularly, we discussed how we can install VS Code and Node.js, right? So that will be the prerequisite for today's session. So if you haven't done that, I would urge you to go back and do that, because that is how you can create your development environment, configure your development environment, and get started with today's lesson. Okay. So for today's agenda, we will be discussing some JavaScript fundamentals, right from very scratch. So that's why I want you guys to have that setup ready with you. Okay. So our first program was basically a simple program. What we basically did is we created a .js file. You can give it any name of your choosing, right? In my case, I have given the name as lesson1.js, right? And the program that we followed was a simple log output using console log, right? And you can simply write any text within the string in single quotes or double quotes, saying that this is my first JavaScript program, right? And to run this particular file, if you go to your terminal, make sure you are at the location where day one is mentioned. Okay, so in my case, it is day one. In your case, will be any folder that you have mentioned over here, right? So, and to go to that folder, right, you can also make use of cd space the location where that folder is, right? So I can see that I'm already inside projects and my current folder, which is day one, right? And to run this particular file, you can simply type node followed by a space and then the file name. So file name will be the exact name that we have used to save this file, right? And once you do that, you can see in the console log output itself, whatever is mentioned inside the single quotes or double quotes as string is giving us an output of console.log, right? So it's a very simple program, nothing fancy here, right? So what we are doing is basically just printing some output on the console log output. Okay. And if you want to do this, there are some prerequisites for setting up the environment. So again, I repeat that if you haven't watched that video, please go back, watch that video, get the setup ready, because that is an important step for us, right? So we can get started with. Okay. So I have some agendas for today. So the first agenda was basically to create a very simple program where we can print log output, right? So this was our first agenda. Print using console log output, right? Now we will slowly move into some other topics, right? So basically we have a topic called variables. Okay, so what do you mean by variables over here? Okay, just as the name suggests, right? Variables are something that would be changing every now and then, right? So suppose I want to address each one of you, right? And each one of you have a different name, right? All the dear colleagues who have joined today have a first name and may or may not have a last name, right? So that's why whenever I want to define anyone, I would define them using an attribute called variable, right? Because first name for say colleague one is a different name, and for colleague two is a different name, say John, and colleague two might have a different name, say Sam, right? So I can simply create a variable, and to create any variable in JavaScript, we use the keyword called var, which is a short form for variable, right? So this is a keyword that is inbuiltly available in JavaScript. So this is not something user can define. So var is a keyword that we need to use as is, right? And when I say I want to mention or call someone or address someone with his first name, I can use the variable say first name. Okay, so this can be a user defined name, any key name, right? And this first name would be a string, right? And whenever we talk about string, I say that we have to make use of double quotes, suggesting to JavaScript that this is a string. Okay, and I can use any name for now, right? So anyone who have joined who want to use their own name can go ahead and do the same thing, right? So that are variables for you. So for variables, you can simply create by using the variables as var, correct? And the another way of notifying a variable is also by using the keyword called let, okay? And you can say let last name is equals to um, James, something like that. Okay, so you have a first name and you have a last name, right? And in these two ways, you can define the variables that are mentioned for you, right? And now in console log output, you can even print those values, right? So basically, whenever I want to call the first name and in the console.log output, if I simply call the variable that is now defined, which is of type string, okay. So whenever you mouse over on your variable as first name, right, the definition of first name is defined already. So variable first name is of type string, right? We haven't mentioned it anywhere, but now JavaScript is able to understand that this is a string because we have assigned a value to this variable, which is of type string, right? And now if I want to simply print the first name, right? And so in this case, what will be the output? Hello?
John.
Yeah, that's right. So whatever value that you would be passing inside this variable can be defined. That value will be available over here, right? Now you can also define multiple variables in a single line, right? So defining multiple variables, right? So whenever I talk about a person, right, there are some properties of a person. So if I just want to call out a person, right, and his characteristics, very basic characteristics, right? So any person I can define by his age, right? So I believe that every person would have his age, right? Should have a variable called his date of birth, correct? And also his sex, right? Whether male, female, not defined, correct? And then this is another way of defining variables, everything in a single line. So how you can do that is you can simply call the keyword as var, suggesting variable, and all these variable can be defined in a single line. So you can simply say variable of type age, of type date of birth, of type sex, right? And now once these are getting defined, I can assign values to this variable. So now if you see, just giving an example, I'm just passing age as a string over here as 5, right? And I would just say sex is male, right? And another thing I would say is, now I would just do a log output of the age over here, right? So similarly, what value that we have seen when we do a console log to log output for first name as John, when I do a console log output of age, I would be expecting the same to happen, right? So let me just do that for now. So when I say console.log and I pass the variable as age, right? So it's again a very simple program. And now if I want to run this program, so I think you already know the answer what can be expected over here, right? The age is shown as 5. Okay. Now what happens when I redefine my age? Okay. So I simply say I had previously defined my age as 5, right? Now I am reassigning it, reassigning age, right? To say age equals to 6, right? Now if I try to check the value that is stored inside this log variable or this variable as age, okay? So in this case, can you guys tell me what are you expecting to happen? So what would be the output in the second case? So in the first case we saw log outputting age gives me 5. What would happen in the second case? So what would happen when I run this code? Can you just tell me like what would be the output? Anyone? I think you might already know it by seeing the program already. We just made a reassignment of age over here, right? Now the age as a variable value itself is changing, right? So whenever we reassign it, the value gets reassigned and you do a console log output after that statement, you see that ages keep on changing, right? And this is what I mean by a variable itself. Variable is something that would be keep on changing, right? Now what if there are some attributes that you do not want to be changed, right? So I just told you like variables are something that can be changed now, right? So that can be reassigned at any given point of time, right? So when I say that age is 5, the age gets displayed as 5. When I reassign the value of age as 6, the value gets reassigned to 6. Okay. So tomorrow if I want to create some constants, right? So like age can also be treated as a constant variable, right? So I cannot say that the value of the age of a person should be changing, right? Same goes for the other attributes of a person. Say the property of a man of his occupation, right? So if I say if I create a constant, right? By constant, what do I mean is like whenever I assign a value to a variable, that value shouldn't be changed by the user at any given point of time, right? So if I create a constant, right? And to create constant, you can make the use of this keyword called const, const, right? So for variable we have var, and for constant we have const as a variable keyword, right? And now I can say is job role, okay, is something that is constant now, okay? So if I say job role as QA engineer, right? And in the second case, if I want to change the value of job role to some other value, okay, say I'm saying he's a developer, okay, and now I do a console.log output. Okay, and this time I'm passing the value of job role over here. So now in this case, can you guys tell me what output are you expecting to happen in this case? Okay, so just to see the output of this console.log output, let me comment out the previous console.log output so that we can focus on what is happening with this particular statement. Okay, so the first name is coming as John, no problem. So John with job role. Okay, so what is that you are expecting to happen in this case, guys?
Does it give QA engineer?
Okay, let's see that. You see the magic of using a program with a different constant variable. It works in accordance on how it is defined. So if you see this, it clearly says you like assignment to constant variable is not allowed. Okay. So now if I comment out this code of job variable, and now if I rerun this code, everything works in accordance. Okay, so when you define anything as constant, it gives that power that now this cannot be redefined. Okay, so John is a QA engineer. You cannot rechange his job role to a developer. Okay, so this is how you see the error in the runtime but not in compile time. Okay, so whenever I will be talking about JavaScript, I would be also pinpointing its pain points, right? Because we will be gradually moving to TypeScript, and I would showcase you how this can be not of a big problem when we work with TypeScript. So I think now you might have understand that variables, we can reassign the value of the variables, right? So in terms of age, we were able to change the value of age from 5 to 6 to 10, right? When you defined your variable type as type of constant, right? As the name itself suggests, right? So it's a constant. That means it cannot be reassigned, right? Now, does it make sense? You guys are
Sounds
able
good.
to follow? Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So that's why if you are trying to reassign the value of job role to a different job role, say developer, and now if you try to do the console log output, right, and you try to run this program, we saw the error stating clearly that assignment to constant variable is a type error, right? And it also shows you which line of code is having a problem, right? So if you see the console log output itself, it will show you that at line number 28, there is a problem with the statement saying that now job role is reassigned to some other value, and that is not allowed because this is a constant variable. Yeah, any questions here? We are taking it very slow so that you understand variables, you understand constant, and then we can move on to different topics slowly.
so reassignment can be done if you use let as a type
Yes,
of
yes,
declaring
yes.
variables, right? Let and where.
Let and var. Yeah. So that's why
So
we
can
started with let and var, right? And I showed you an example where var as an example, I was able to reassign the value to 6, right? But with constant, as the name suggests, we would not be doing that, right? Because the name itself suggests that it is something that should be defined at the very beginning, and then the definition of that variable should not be changed. Okay, now moving on to different topics. So we have different data types. Okay, so I'm just walking you through very fundamentals in the beginning, and then we would talk about some different concepts that are used in JavaScript as well. Okay, so now I can just create a variable, say middle name, right? And when I say middle name is A, right? So when I declare anything in double string, I have already said this in some when we previously discussed about first name. So anything that is getting defined in double quotes is actually a data type of type string, right? Now, if you want to define, say, age, okay, I'm using age with A as capital, so not to confuse with the age that we had defined over here, right? And if I want to declare someone age, say 27, right? And when I declare it in double quotes, right? So this is still a string, right? Even though I am declaring it in as a number inside the string, right? But if I want to declare this as a data type of type number, right, then I would have to make it without the double quotes, right? And this way it is understood that this is of type number. Okay, so even after you declare the variable, you assign a value to it, and you still have don't clarity whether what is the data type of this variable, you can simply mouse over on this variable name, right? So here it clearly says that variable middle name is of type string. Okay, so you don't forcefully define any type in JavaScript, but once the assignment is done, it is able to understand that now you have defined it as string, right? So we have string, number, and we have other data types. If you are aware already, you can list me down, right? So if I can say whether is working, okay, so is working can be treated as a variable. So is working, there are always two possibilities, right? So a person called Dave of age 27 may or may not be working, right? So the value can be either he is working or he is not working, right? So in such kind of variables, we can make use of booleans, right? So if it he is working, I will make assign him in the value of the boolean as true, right? And this will be of type boolean, okay? And there can be other variables also, or sorry, other data types also that can be used or that is used in JavaScript and TypeScript program, that is null and undefined. Okay. So if I say variable and just as an example, I would just add salary as a variable, right? And I'm not sure like whether he has a salary or not, right? But I just assume that his initial salary will start with null. So I can simply provide it as null. Okay, and there can be also whether is expected salary is something that is still under discussion, right? So I can make it as undefined. Okay, so these are some variable sorry data types that are available in JavaScript. Okay, the first three are the very common ones that we would be extensively using, right, which is string, number, and boolean, right? And then provided with null and undefined. So just to quick recap, we talked about variables var and let, right? And I just showed you a difference between when to use var and when to use let as a keyword, right? And also from a use case perspective, you should be able to understand now that whenever you are defining a variable at its initial stage itself, if you know that the value or the assignment of the variable should not be changed, you should always go with const. Okay, and then the second step would be in some case you find that there might be cases where this might needs to get reassigned. In that case you can go with var. Okay, and with var you can also change the data type of a value, right? And when you are using let, right, you can reassign the value but you can never reassign its type. Okay, so that are some key elements that we want to focus today. Okay, so one more habit that I would like you guys to follow is like I would be writing very small programs in the beginning. So it is okay if you write this program along with me or avoid it. But most of the cases, if you are practicing it along with me, the concept will be much clearer to you. Okay. So now let us learn about how we can manipulate or work around when we are using a variable which is of type string, right? So let me go ahead and create a new file, and that would be my lesson 2 for today, right? And just imagine that I want to print any message, right? So I'm working in a e-commerce or a pricing store company, right, we have some variables that we need to define, right? So for an example, if I just want to create some variables, say uh, properties related to a product, right? So you go to a store, right, and you find any item, right, and the name of that item is um, you can give any character to that. So for example, a phone, right, and this item is of type phone, right, and it would have any price, okay, and now I can simply say the price is 100 rupees, okay, I'm just giving any value, right, and if someone is buying this wants to buy this item, I can simply say that a message should be shown to the user saying that the price of selected item phone is 100 rupees, correct? Now when I simply do a console.log output of this value, right, of this message, okay, so what are we expecting to happen over here, right? Nothing fancy, right? So this time when you would be running this code, right, what we're trying to do is we are running in a different file. The file name is lesson2.js. This will simply print out the message output saying the price of the selected phone is 100 rupees. Okay, but do you find an ambiguity in this variable as message, right? Because tomorrow when I want to change the item name from phones to mobile, right, and price from 100 to 200, right, the message will always be keep on reading the same message saying the price of the selected phone is 100 rupees, right? So there should be a mechanism where we are able to add as a variable over here in the message itself. So instead of phone, it should be whatever item name mentioned by the user, and instead of 100 rupees, it should be whatever value that is being reassigned in the variable called var, right? In the variable called price, right? So how we can do that? Okay, so this concept is actually known as concatenation. Concatenation, right? So how I can change this value over here is I can keep this as a single string, right? And then instead of adding phone, I can add my variable, right? And this variable would be item name, which will be keep on changing, right? And then you will find that in another string, right? So this is the start of one string. To that one string, we are adding one variable which is also of type string, right? So that is getting allowed, right? And now I can simply add all other thing in another single quote, right? Okay. So this time, what will be the output? So you can see item, and then I had to also provide a space over here, and your value will be the price of the selected item that is now mobile is 100 rupees, right? So now again, if I want to change the value of this item name to some other item name, say charger, right? The only change that I need to do is in the variable, right? The message being the fundamentally the same and only changing where it is required to change, we can make that variation always. Okay, so do try this example out. This is a classic example of string concatenation. Right? And let me know if you have any queries with respect to that. Okay, in the same message, you can go ahead and make one change, right? Instead of 100, you can change this with the value of price, right? And now if you want to change any value of price also, that can be manipulated over here. Okay, so you can go ahead and do that as well.
Want us to try it now or this one?
Yeah, you can try it parallelly. It's a very simple task to do. I have already shown you an example with item name. 100 is something that you can make it the change on your own. Okay. So this is one way of concatenating. Okay. The another way of concatenating, I can just show you. So I can just create a new variable. Okay. And let me just print it as new message. Okay. So you can concatenate using this kind of syntax where everything is inside the double quote. The another way, you can also make use of this tilde operator that is available to you. Okay, so this is not single quotes but a tilde operator that you see. Okay, that is available right above your tab button, right? And then you can simply write your message, the price of selected item is, right? And selected item and then the value of that item. And if you want to pass any variable in such case, you can make use of dollar, right? And with the help of dollar, you can make use of parenthesis. And inside this parenthesis, it is expecting an expression, okay? And our expression would be item name for this, okay? And is what? Okay, is 100 rupees. So instead of 100, now you can simply provide another variable, another expression of price, right? And then provide the rest of the key. Okay, now if I do the same console.log output or this new variable that we created, new message, you will be able to achieve the same result. Okay, so I'm just showing you both of these approaches. You can go ahead with any of the approaches. Mostly in Java and JavaScript, you would find concatenation used with this kind of approach where we mention everything in a single tilde operator, and wherever you find variable name you just make the use of dollar with parenthesis and you provide the expression, right? So here the value gets dynamically changed, right? So the price of selected item charger is 200 rupees. If I want to go ahead and change it to say t-shirt and price as 25, right? And the value will be getting changed accordingly. Okay, so do try it out both of these examples, right? So this is what you mean by concatenation of string. Okay, now we'll be talking about another subtopic. So I'm taking very small chunks of topics so that those remains intact, right? Someone who has just getting started with programming, this would be kind of helpful for you to get some hands on with, right? So let me now go with another lesson for today that I wish to cover, right? So all this might be familiar with you, so you can take it as a revision. For someone, this is absolutely new, right? Take some time to digest these concepts, right? And as we are going very slow, so I'm making sure that you can follow along. Okay. Now the third topic that I want to discuss is about objects, right? So just take a scenario where I want to define a customer. Okay. So my priority or task is to define a customer. Okay. So whenever I say customer as Rahul, right? So there are some attributes that should come to our mind, right? So just imagine you are handling a database of all customer data that you are working with or client data that you're working with, right? And whenever I want to call the customer, I want to know what is his first name, last name, age, date of entry, and all those attributes, right? So this is how you can actually define a customer as an object itself, right? So if you want to define a variable whose name is customer for now, okay, and whenever I want to call this customer object, right, with some properties, say what is the first name of this customer, right? So I can use this kind of syntax. So I can say that customer has a first name, Rahul, right? And his last name is something, anything, I think Srivastav, something like that, right? So I define customer with first name and last name, right? And now I simply want to know that who this customer is, right? So you can simply call console.logoutput, right? And let me just pass customer over here. So the entire object of this particular customer, the details available against this customer will be shown in the console.logoutput. Okay. And again, I'm just trying to re-highlight this point that whenever you want to run any JavaScript file, you make use of node space provided by the file name exactly. Okay. So we are now want to run lesson 3 JS file. So I'll be renaming it to lesson 3 over here, right? And you see that the entire object of the customer is now shown to you. Okay. You can go ahead and change the customer object, right? And one more thing, if I want to add, more details to the customer, say he's having a property of age, right? And he is 24 years old, right? And if you want to add the date of entry or what kind of customer he is, right? So if I say is active, right? So is active can be of type boolean, and I can define this customer to be true, suggesting that this customer is active, right? And now if I do the console.log output, you can see that I can access the customer object completely, right? So whenever I say customer, uh, I can see that he's having a first name, last name, he having some particular age, and he's active, right? The same thing I can do for a new customer. So if I just copy this part, right, and define a different object, right? This time instead of defining as customer, let me define it as new customer, right? And the new customer can have a different name, right? So his name will be John Adams. He is of different age. He's 22 years old. He is not active, right? So this is how you can create object out of a customer, right? So to create any object for a variable, say variable new customer, right? The syntax will be variable, you provide the name of that variable, then equals to, and in parentheses you can define what attributes or data types this customer should have. So basically it's properties, right? So now if I want to call new customer, right, you can see that whatever value that is mentioned for new customer as object is now accessible to us. Okay, so these are the object values that we define for new customer, right, with name as John, last name, and in this particular case he is not an active customer, right? So the customer that is previously defined with us is an active customer, and the new customer is not active, right? And just as an example, I just want to ask you guys, like for example, for this new customer, I'm only focused on knowing whether he's active or not, right? So in that case, what can be done over here? Like if you have any previous experience, you can share the same, right? So the question here is like whenever we do a console.log output of new customer, we see the entire customer object getting printed, right? So what is, there is a use case where I'm only my only intention is to know whether this customer is active or not, right? In that case, how can I do that, right? So if you see, when I use a dot operator right after customer, right, all the properties that define this new customer is mentioned, right? So his property age is mentioned, whether he's active or not is mentioned, his last name is mentioned, right? And if you just hover through it, right, you would also come to know that if I hover through his property active, right, from the details that are shown in VS Code itself, so many things are provides me with clarity, right? So I can say that this customer is having a property called is active, right? And that is of type bool. Okay, actually it is completely reading as boolean. So if I click on read more attribute, you can clearly see that now new customer has a property called active is active, and which is of type boolean. Okay, so let me go ahead and uh, enter is active, right? So can you just let me know like what would be the output that you might be expecting to show in the console.log output for this particular use case?
False.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So this way of syntaxing is also widely used in JavaScript and TypeScript, where you define an object, and when you have a use case that you are very much particularly waiting the or to know whether this customer is active or not, you can simply call that object provided with a dot operator. Whenever you call a dot operator, which is this one, right? Whenever you call it with the dot, all the properties against that customer is actually shown to you. Okay. And also one more interesting thing that you can combine now is now let me just write a console.log statement. We had previously learned about concatenation. You can use the same thing over here, right? So if I want to know whether this customer is active or not, right, what I can do is I can provide a variable, right? I can say customer dot first name. So I just want to print out saying that Rahul is active or is not active, right? So I can say Rahul is, and then whatever the value. I don't know what whether he is, whether the customer his first name is what, right? And also I do not know whether he's an active customer or not, right? So if you want to get that data very quickly, you can simply make use of this kind of syntax as well, suggesting customer dot first name is, and you provide this variable, right? Now let me do the same thing again, and in our concatenated field you would find that the first console.log output says that new customer is active, that was false, and in the second case we see that Rahul is true. Okay, Rahul is true means Rahul is active because true is a boolean type that we assign to this value. Okay, so this was all about objects, right? We will be using this kind of objects very frequently, so I just wanted to walk you through some basic examples on how you can create your own objects. Do try these examples out, right? And try to play around with it. Okay. And also I wanted to highlight you one more thing is like I just told you like we can use dot notation to call its property. You can also make use of bracket notation. Okay, so let me just show you both the cases for you. So the first thing was the dot notation that we used, right? So how to use dot notation? Simply call customer dot first name as property, right? And as we have defined this as variable, okay, so always highlight that we have highlighted or created this variable with the keyword called var, suggesting that is variable, suggesting that its value can be changed, right? So once I have already created the object, now I want to reassign the value of its first name, saying that there was a spelling mistake, and now just for example I will just add 1 2 over here, right? And I want to make this correction from Rahul 12 to Rahul itself. Okay, what I can do is I can call the customer his property first name and reassign his value to the correct value, which is Rahul. Okay, so this kind of notation is called dot notation. Okay, the same kind of thing can be also be done using a bracket notation. Okay, the output of both of these cases are same, but these are different ways that you can follow along, right? Because you might also see in your code that you might have been working on that you might see a different notation. So the confusion should not come whether it belongs to the same category or not. Okay, so I can also call customer, right? And whenever I use bracket, right, I'm actually accessing this as an array. So you can see that whenever I call customer, it is actually of type array, right? And it has some different objects. Say it has a property called first name, last name, age, and is active or not, right? And for this customer, if I want to change his last name, so you can see inside the bracket, whenever I use single quotes, right, all these properties are now accessible to me, right? The same way how it was accessible to me when I used a dot operator, the same thing is accessible to me when I use the customer object name, right? Provided with square brackets and then a single quote, right? And now if I want to change his last name, say Rahul, or his last name is changed to something else, right? Say Rahul David, something like that. This can also be done. Okay. So the first thing is dot notation. The second thing is the bracket notation, right? And just to show you that this kind of approach also works in both the cases, both these approaches are a working approach. Let me do a simple log output, right? I will make use of the same syntax that we had over here. So let me just copy this syntax again. Okay, and customer first name, I'm expecting it to come as Rahul. Okay, and then the customer last name should be his last name, right? So let me change it to last name. Okay, and now let me go ahead and rerun this program. You would see that now the value is getting changed, right? So Rahul12 is true is shown from this console.log output. After that, we rechanged his value, he's rechanged his property first name from Rahul12 to simply Rahul, and that value is getting changed. And we also changed his last name using the bracket notation to David, and that is also getting changed. Okay, so both these approaches are working approaches. Okay, whichever approach you find easier, you can follow the same. But just to showcase you, you might see this kind of syntax also, which is now not widely used. People mostly make use of the dot notation as it is simpler, right? But this kind of approach is also more readable. Okay, so that's why I wanted to show you both the examples. Okay. Now, as we have already talked about objects, right?
Sorry.
Yes. Any questions here?
Yeah, 1 second. So can you scroll a bit up, like, it's line 22 and above?
22 and above. Yeah.
So we use this notations two types. One is dot, and the second one in 22 line, there is this brackets form of. So
Yes. That's right.
both, is it just the way it's been
Yeah. It's just
displayed?
the way. That's why I wanted to show you both the way. So way one and way two, both of them are correct way of doing it, right? You can follow any way, right? But just to give you some familiarization with code syntaxes, I'm just showing you both the way. And to also show you that both the way are actually working ways, I also did a console.log output. So you can see that first name that we used, we changed using the dot notation, the value was getting changed. Last name that we used, we made use of the bracket notation and the value got changed to David, right? So both these notations or practices are accepted formats and there are no issues with this.
Before this brackets line 22, we did a first method, right? Can you show that new?
Before bracket,
Yeah.
this is the one,
So,
right? Dot notation, right?
before line 22.
Before line 22. This one?
I think, yeah. I think you commented it out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to show you like you can get access to any property of this object. It's the same as any other object, right? It's the same thing that you have used over here itself.
But again, you have used the square brackets also, right? In order to reassign. So we have three types: dot, this one, and the square brackets one. At line 27, we reassigned it.
We have only two types. One is the dot notation, the other is the bracket notation. How you can access any property. There is no third type. any confusions here?
So line 22, we have used it in the dollar sign declaration, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Gave it in
This
a
is just a way how we can concatenate strings, right? Dollar and this expression, right? We are just calling that expression. Okay. This is where you can just call that expression. That's it. And to call this
okay.
expression, you can also make use of this expression as well. So this expression is also can be used in this place. Not a problem.
Okay.
Okay. With dollar and this single tilde that you see, you can even provide any other string in between, right? Like that example I just showed you over here, right? Two examples. So one way is that you can provide plus plus, and inside the two plus symbols you can provide the variables, right? The other way, simpler and more readable way, is this way. In JavaScript, TypeScript, mostly people will be making use of this way. So that's why in all my examples, I'm emphasizing on using this kind of syntaxes more often now.
So that is more used, is it? The second one.
Yeah, yeah. This is the one that I have seen mostly, but uh, just to keep you aware that you might also see this kind of syntax, so that might not, that should not confuse you. Both are
Okay.
the same thing. Okay.
Okay.
So we covered very small chunks of topics. This might seem very easier, but if you are working for the first time, right, please go back and go through this video again, or if you have any confusions around the same, and do let me know. So I'm taking much time in explaining you simple data types, objects, arrays, because this is where you create the foundation of any program. Okay, once you try to get a better understanding of this concept, it would get much easier for you to follow along, right? Now let me just talk about arrays. Okay, so what if you want to create a variable, say companies, right? So variable called companies, right? So I'm using plural name over here, right? And you have different companies that are available, right? So you have Google as a company, right? So if you want to define an array, basically you can make use of square brackets, right? And inside square brackets you can provide the value. So you have a company called Google, right? Then you have another company called Microsoft. Okay, I'm just listing down any all the MNCs that comes to my mind, right? And then you have a famous EV car company, Tesla, right? All these big giants, right? Now, if you want to have a console.log output, right, of all these companies, right? Now, if I simply say console.log output companies, right, I can access to all the companies that are mentioned by myself over here, right? You can see Google, Microsoft, and Tesla is getting highlighted. Okay, so what should I do if I want to actually only locate one company which is sitting at the end, right? Which is Tesla, right? So in arrays, right, there is a concept called indexing that is getting followed, right? And with array, always the indexing starts with zero. Okay, so in the background, you can see that Google is actually sitting at a placeholder zero, that is the index. Index is a pointer with which you can locate an element in an array. Okay, and indexing always starts with zero. So if I say companies dot or companies and then with index at zero position, you can see that only one value will be returned to me, right? Which is Google, right? Which is sitting at index zero, right? And if I want to select Tesla, the index position would be 0, 1, and 2, right? So the index position would be 2, right? So this is how you can locate an element in an array, right? So to locate any element in an array, you can make use of indexing also, right? So basically we just defined an array of string, right? And all these values are now of type string. If you simply mouse over on variable name as companies, you will also find that this companies is now defined of type string with square brackets, denoting that this companies is of type string array, right? And if you want to locate any element in the array particularly, you can make use of indexing. Again, the same concept. Inside the bracket, you can provide the index value, right? So these are some very basic things that I just drilled it down. Okay, if you have any queries or questions, do let me know. And as an exercise for today, create different object types and try to play around with it. If you have any queries in accessing those, understanding those, do let me know.
So this arrays has to be, if I have to use the indexing, that has to be within the square brackets. We have to identify.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, you can do one more experiment over here. Like you can even reassign the value of position at any position, right? So tomorrow, if I want that at index 0 position, Google should not be available. There should be some other value. You can also go ahead and do that. So how to do that is the same thing that we discussed before, right? So to access element at any position, right, we can make use of square bracket. So if I want to change something at index position 0, right, and then I can change it to something like this, right? So get comfortable using arrays, objects, right? Create objects and do some experiments around it, right? Try to reassign the value, and also always do a console.log output to see whether that value reassignment is getting changed or not.
If we have
Uh,
to do this reassignment with the dot notation instead of brackets, what can we do?
Dot notation is to access properties. So let me write dot notation over here and let us see what we get. Okay. So this is not a property of this object. We haven't defined object this as an object, right? We have defined this as an array, right? So the only way to access any values that are available inside this position, you have to go with the bracket and then provide the index where this value of this array is sitting. Okay, dot notation is to access properties. Okay, so whenever I create an object, right, so when I create an object called customer, if you mouse over it, you will find that I have defined customer, uh, this which has properties called first name, last name, age, and is active. Okay, these are all properties of this object. Okay, the way we define this array, this is not an object. Okay, we define this variable company of type string of array, right? So here you cannot use dot operator. Here you have to use bracket and then provided with indexing. Hope that makes sense. Okay. You can make one more experiment over here. You can also, whenever you want to create objects, right, you can also inside the object uh, create a variable here itself, right? So if I want to simply, whenever I want to create a variable customer, right, and I also want to know, let me also define one more another variable so that makes sense to customer. So I can say customer owns a certain number of cars. Okay, so let me create one more variable, say variable cars, right? And this customer owns BMW, and he also owns another vehicle. What vehicle? Like a Benz, right? And I can simply also define that this customer has a property cars, right? Where I can mention like what cars does this customer owns. Okay, so that can also be done over here. Okay, so just experiment around it like the way I'm doing. So if I want to say that customer owns Benz or Audi, right? So even this kind of definition of a customer is allowed. Okay, so definition of customer is not only restricted to the type string number boolean. You can also provide it as a string array itself, right? And now if you want to simply call out the customer, you can do that same experiment. You can do console.log output, and you can get access to these cars that he's owning. Okay. Do try these examples out and let me know if you face any problems or queries around it. So object and array is different. Okay. So when I say object, right, you see I'm making use of parenthesis, right? And when I say variable of type array, I'm making use of square brackets. Okay, so let me just put it down for you. So whenever I use parenthesis, okay, this is to denote it is an object. Okay, whenever I say it is an object, it would have properties, right? And whenever I define anything with square bracket, this simply denotes that this is array, right? So for today's exercise, can you just create array of numbers, right? Array of numbers. Just example like student marks, right? Like an array of numbers, right? Anything that comes to your mind, right? You can just experiment around. There is no hardliners or what needs to be followed. It's all up to your imagination and what all things that you can come up with. I think we are already at the end of the session. So if you have any queries or questions, we can discuss on the same, right? So right from lesson one that we started with very basics of JavaScript fundamentals, printing using console log output, right? If you have any queries around that, then followed by lesson two, where we define concatenation of string using this kind of syntax, and then lesson three. Okay, so lesson three might be a uh, little bit confusing for now when it comes to objects and arrays, but tomorrow we will revisit the same concepts again.
So, how we will be learning this TypeScript after the JavaScript conversion, right?
Yeah. So TypeScript I will be slowly introducing it to you, because in TypeScript also you will be making use of objects, arrays, and all kind of simple syntaxes.
Okay,
So even when I was talking about variables, right, I showed you a live example where in compile time only you see an error, not in
okay. Yeah.
sorry, you see an error in runtime but not in compile time. All these issues can be resolved with TypeScript. But
Yeah.
to set the motivation, you need to actually first learn JavaScript.
Okay.
So if people don't have any questions, we can close or wind up the session for today.
Cyril,
Yes, Niharika.
I have a question. I'm not able to run you know, these scripts for some reason. So, but I'm not able to share my screen and show you. How can I get that fixed?
Uh, so is Node getting recognized in your machine?
Yeah,
So do
already.
one, just simply type node space hyphen version. So if node is getting recognized, then there is no problem with your node.
What is it? Node space.
Node space hyphen v. Run it in your terminal or in your VS Code where you are trying to run the same
Yeah, it is
uh,
running.
running, right? You are
Yes.
seeing some version, or what is that
Yeah,
that
I'm
is?
seeing 22.16.
Okay. What happens when you type node space then the file name that you want to run, which is in .js format? What happens then?
It says module cannot find the module not found.
Module not found. So are you at the right path? If I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would find that all my files are inside this folder called day1, right? Even my terminal is at that location in my VS Code itself, right? So if that is not the case, you can also navigate to that location, right? So for example, if I don't know where your file location is exactly, but I will just show you an example. Like if I create a new file over here, say lessons, right? And if I want to run something which is inside this file, right? So for now, let me just copy this file and paste it over here, saying lesson 3, right? And if I want to run something which is inside lessons, right, I can simply first write directory so I can see what directories are available to me. And then I can just change my directory using cd command to this directory, right? So right now you can see my directory changed to lessons folder, and then I can simply write node lesson3.js, and that way you can actually find it out. So I believe that you are in the wrong directory when you are accessing through the terminal.
Maybe I'll try this then. Yep.
Is that the correct assumption? Did you cross check whether you are at the correct directory?
I think I'm not running in the right directory. That's the problem.
Yeah, that might be the problem. So module not found exception corresponds to that. So do check it out, and yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.